Thank you both for your very comprehensive presentations there, and it is of huge concern to rural TDs like myself. I'm from Laois Offaly, and many rural TDs, you know, it's about job retention in our rural communities as well, and I understand that there will be significant job losses should this derogation not be sought. It's also very concerning that it will lead to the creation of a cartel and a monopoly. But more concerning is the fact that it's another financial burden that farmers just do not need. Farmers who are struggling to already make a living do not need another financial burden. So I'm very concerned about the whole situation, and I believe that in addition to political will, we need common sense here. It's not rocket science, and I think that what needs to be done here is the derogation needs to be sought, and that will put the issue to bed, hopefully, and enable 3,000 jobs to be protected. But I have a number of questions. Do you believe that your right to earn a living as pharmacists or responsible persons will be adversely impacted upon should the department not get the derogation? My next question is the UK operating a similar system? What type of a system are they operating? And could that be used by a model, as a model here or as a template? And my final question relates to Scandinavia. I understand that Denmark and Sweden have separated prescribing and dispensing. And I'm just wondering, in terms of solutions, could that be a possible solution here? Because I understand that it is working very effectively in those Scandinavian countries, and that should we hit an obstacle, and we shouldn't, because after all the derogation is there to be sought, and that should be the end of it. But in the event of solutions being needed, do you feel that that could be a good solution also?
Thank you very much, Cahir. Look, Terence O'Shea on behalf of the Independent Licensed Merchants Association. First of all, I'm a licensed merchant in that I operate 2 licensed merchant premises, both are registered with the Department of Agriculture, and I'm also a responsible person. So I've been 38 years in the industry, and I think when I set out, first of all, I never thought I'd appear before a joint Oireachtas committee in the hope of saving my business that I've worked hard to establish over a number of years. So I think it was basically on the Carol Nolan question, and I think it was to do with the earning a living from my profession as a responsible person, and would I be affected? And honestly, the answer is yes. Yes, I would, and yes, licensed merchants would be. We've no doubt that job losses and the potential for business closures will be a consequence if the DAFM fails to avail of the derogation as provided for in Article 1054. We also believe that there's a responsibility on elected representatives, appointed ministers and public servants to promote enterprise and employment. We also believe that any regulation, directive or legislation that fails to promote these objectives should be enacted. And I'd also like to go on and say that if the DAFM proceed to introduce the legislation, it will result in job losses and business closures. Many merchants like myself are dependent on antiparasitic medicines as our primary source of income, and we will be forced to close. Others who offer a wider range of essential farm products will exit the industry, resulting in large-scale job losses. We believe multi-site merchants will find some locations unviable and they will close. And the important thing in all of this is the Chief Veterinary Officer, Dr. Martin Blake, in his letter to Europe, he has made it quite clear that he sees issues arising in regard to competitiveness in the marketplace if some of the existing outlets are forced to close. And I think it's probably important that I draw the attention of the committee to EU Directive 2109/633 on anti-competitive and unfair trading practices in the agricultural and food supply chain. This directive will prohibit unfair trading practices being imposed on one trading partner by another. This was adopted on the 17th of April 2019, is legally binding on all EU states. And I think the emphasis here is that as of now, and as late as yesterday, I had a licensed merchant in touch with me who said his turnover over the past 6 weeks was affected to the tune of €32,000 because a number of his farmer clients were unable to secure prescriptions from a veterinary practice that had moved into the area, that were involved in the sale of veterinary medicines themselves, and they were making it quite clear to the farmer they had the product on the shelf, they were providing the prescription, and that's where the farmer should be purchasing his products. And we think the retention of veterinary prescriptions, which a farmer client is legally entitled to, for a sole economic reason, will be in breach of this new directive 2019/633. And the question I'd ask is, can we introduce legislation which will encourage this malpractice? And I would describe what's happening at the moment with the retention of prescriptions as a malpractice. It currently exists. People who are doing it are already in breach of the Animal Remedies Act 2007. We're proposing to introduce new legislation which will encourage this, and that in turn will clearly be contrary to the provisions of EU Directive 2019/633.